Almost.
Hey, good afternoon. I'm Nathaniel back here, and today joining with me, I have a guest on, Marshall Swing. And so let me introduce my friend here. He's also into prophecy, and he believes that our time is very short. So, Marshall, I'll just let you introduce yourself.
Okay, Nathaniel. Before I introduce myself, I'm going to talk a little bit about you and how we met. Um, I, as I came into understanding of where Daniel's 70th week is located, and also the timing of it, and all the various prophecies that indicate days and times and 3.5 years, 42 months, those sorts of things, and putting it all together. One day I was sitting at home and I did a little search on Google, and I was looking to see if anybody else in the whole world had come across the dates of 5 and 6 of April of 2019. And I found two people. One was you, Nathaniel, and the other was a couple out in Pennsylvania somewhere. Her YouTube channel, I think, is um, God's Healer 7. So those are the only two instances at that time. And this was, what, a year and a half ago, something like that, when we first met, 2 years ago, not quite sure. And so that was the only two other people that I had any indication at all who had figured out the correct time frame. So that's how I met Nathaniel. My name is Richard Marshall Swing. And a little bit of background about me is I was trained in music. From the 6th grade on, I was just in love with music. I played trombone, I played piano. I was extremely good at math. And my work, I played professional music for a while in piano bars back around 1979 and 80. Then I went into the Air Force and I worked in engineering and later on in computers. After I got out of the Air Force, I went into consulting, computer consulting in St. Louis. And then I got a job with Eveready Battery and Ralston Purina as a senior computer programmer. I moved into database administration, and some system administration, security, backup and recovery. So I understood the whole gamut of computers and databases. After I left that company, then many years later, I got into precious metals investing. And in precious metals investing, I began to realize that there was manipulation going on of gold and silver so that they would not compete with fiat money as a real currency. I guess the real upshot of who I am is that when short time after I was born again in 1975, I had this dream/vision right there in my college hotel dorm room, and I saw 2 stars. It was as if I was looking right through 3 floors of dorm room right into the heavens and saw 2 stars. And Yehovah said that you are one of these. And I thought the first thing that came into my mind was the Revelation 11, that I'm one of the 2 witnesses. So that was a shocker for a 18-year-old kid. And I kept that with me and didn't tell anybody for all those years from 1975 until about 2012. And I told one person. Later on, I told 1 or 2 or 3 others. In 2015, I came out in public in a full worldwide release through PR Newswire that you can easily find on the internet, declaring that Daniel's 70 week had started on 23rd of September of 2015, and that I am indeed Moses, the chief or the first of the 2 witnesses. So I'm not some crazy guy. All you have to do is Google my name, Marshall Swing, on the internet and type silver and gold, and you'll see that I've been doing analysis of silver and gold metals for well over 6 years now. And I also made predictions about the crash of gold and silver, which came true. And they were very accurate as to the depth of the crash Silver was about $42 at the time. And I predicted or said, my analysis shows that they're going to take it down to $15 or below. And they did. And that came true in about late November of 2014. So over the years, I have often made price predictions and directional changes in price in my trading, and I've never missed a prediction. I did all this, and I learned to do all this through studying the futures reports that come out of the CFTC.gov. And I was able to take my database skills and my math skills and build a data model and understand that when you see certain things in the chart, then you know what the commercial banks are doing to manipulate gold and silver. So I've published these, especially in the last 6 months or so. I've published almost every turn. I publish my trades, bang, 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 and they all come true.
All this searchable then? You're saying you can like look this up, it's all documented.
Yeah, all you have to do is go to silverdoctors.com. It's a website that's run by 2 pharmacists who were doctors in pharmacy, and then they decided that they believed in the gold and silver message in the last days so strongly that they formed this company, and they left the pharmacy business and became entrepreneurs in gold and silver. I published there. In 2012, I asked, we call him the doc. I asked the doc, do you want somebody to do COT reports? That's Commitment of Traders, which is the weekly publication of the CFTC numbers that you can look at and then try to determine, what are the commercial banks up to? What are the speculators up to? What are managed money up to? So on and so forth. So I took all that, I did my analysis, and I've never made a mistake as far as a price turn. So I've made a couple tiny little errors where maybe the drift in a price turn went too far and I didn't set my stops quite right. And maybe I lost 10 or 20 cents on an ounce, something like that. But by and large, every prediction I make, every trade that I make is correct. So no real errors.
Well, that's good to get started with, just because there's a lot of gurus out there that keep predicting dates, and they're just random dates that don't mean anything.
Right.
And every time they fails. So at least you got that.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Do you want me to go through these questions now?
Well, let me say one more thing.
Okay, go ahead.
I just told everybody who watches this, and I don't know how many people will watch it. I just said, hey, I'm Moses. I'm the chief of the 2 witnesses. All you have to do to see my testimonies or go out to kingmosessong.com, kingmosessong.com, or you can type in chiefofthe2witnesses.com, and you will see several articles that detail things that have happened throughout my life, which confirm to me, maybe they'll confirm it to other people, that I am indeed the embodiment of Moses' spirit. And I know that sounds way out, and it sounds.
Yeah, well, I would say that that'd be up to them to decide, and a lot of it's going to have to do with in the future. Once all these things would come to pass, they're going to have to come back and say, "Well, you told them so." So, I would say that right now it's not that, it's kind of their time to heed the warning if they want to heed the warning, and if they don't heed the warning, then I guess it's on them. But yeah, go ahead if.
Okay, so like I said before, if you go to silverdoctors.com, you go down the right-hand side, you'll see my name there, Marshall Swing. Just click it. You'll see 6 years of articles and price predictions, all kinds of things like that. And I say that basically, gold and silver were extremely instrumental in the rescue of the children of Egypt. I mean, the children of Israel out of Egypt, because Moses instructed the children of Israel to borrow gold and silver and precious things and cloths and all this kind of stuff. And that later was used in the construction of the temple. This time around, it's very similar, as the modern day Moses is telling the children of Israel and those who would be grafted into Israel to purchase gold and silver, because this crash is coming. And after this crash, then we're going to have a one world government, a cashless society. immediately, about October, November of this year, roughly. Could be by the end of September. But if this crash happens, you're going to see total social anarchy that the police and the military cannot contain. So it's going to be a wild, crazy ride. But this has been predicted for decades. The Economist magazine in 1988 published a cover where they said cashless society in the year 2018. And they have the number 10 by it. And a lot of us who analyze these things believe that the world cashless society will be restored by October, which is the 10th month. Okay, so that's enough about me. Back to the outline. We're on 1B.
Yeah, so basically, you've already kind of mentioned why you believe we're living in the last days, but the next question is just, well, do you believe we're living in the last days, and what is your belief on that?
Well, we are indeed in the last days of this millennium, and we are in Daniel's 70th week. There's no doubt in my mind about it. I'm 100%, and most people who read my analysis believe that we are, in fact, within Daniel's 70th week. And right now, what we're doing is we're counting down from the start date of September 23rd of 2015, and we're counting over into April of 2019, which is 1,290 days, if I don't mess up my math. We know that in the prophecies, 1,260 days, 1,290 days, and 1,335 days are extremely important as we try to find a 7-year period where we construct the essence of Daniel's 70th week. And that's one of the key things that I got from you, Nathaniel, was that you showed me a very neat little 1,335 days between part of Purim and the last day of Tabernacles. And that was that's just exceptional math. And, you know, Yehovah leads me to meet people who have found these little bits and pieces of the puzzle. So I just add them to my last day spreadsheet and my timeline, and it just all fits and comes together. The countdown to Daniel's 70th week, in my opinion, humble as it is, began on June the 7th, 1967, which was the day that Jerusalem was taken back by Israel in the 6 Days War. So if you take the prophetic Jubilee, which is 49 years, and then you multiply that by 360 days, which is 12 30-day months, then you come out to a number that is 17,640 days. And it lands right on the Day of Atonement, September 23rd, 2015, which was the calculated Day of Atonement. I'm not saying it's the correct Day of Atonement, but it was the calculated Day of Atonement, just days before the final blood moon of the set of 4 blood moons that Mark Biltz had identified. So that is an incredible calculation to come out right on a Day of Atonement, just like Leviticus 25 says, you're going to go 49 years to the Day of Atonement, and then you're going to announce the Day of Atonement. You're going to announce the Jubilee on that day. So this is the prophetic side of things. It's not the actual physical 49 years. So I see that as a key. The other key, of course, is Israel becoming a nation in 1948. And now we fast forward 70 years, which a lot of people think is a generation, and we are in 2018. We've got that Economist magazine telling us a cashless society in 2018. There's many, many other factors, which I won't go into here because this is a short video, and we don't want to lose people. I throw out a lot of numbers. I throw them out fast. I've lived with these numbers for years. So 17,640 days, which is 49 years times 360 days. That's a key. You come out right to September 23rd, 2015. So if we then take the calculation of 42 months times 30 days, which is 1,260 days, and we subtract that from September 23rd, 2015, we go right back to the, what is it, the 29th of October 2008. That's the day that Barack Obama had his 30-minute infomercial. Just happens to be that way. It's the same time where he said 7 times, I think, in his one of his speeches, he used the phrase "in 1 week," "in 1 week," "in 1 week." Well, the very curious thing was it was less than a week to the actual November election, and he used that phrase "in 1 week" many times. I'm of the total and complete opinion that Barack Hussein Obama, is in fact and will become the one that we call the anti-Messiah. My guess, and it's just a guess, is that he is going to very soon take over as the UN president or chief, whatever they call the guy who heads the UN. So then all the nations would technically report to him. So you've got this crash, this massive economic crash that has to be resolved. And who better than Satan's man, Barack Obama, to gather around all the leaders of the world and say, okay, here's how we're going to get the economies going again. I'm of the firm opinion that the economic crash is the mortal wound, the mortal head wound of one of the heads of the beast revelation system. If you look at Revelation 17 and 18, it's almost all about economics. Now, the beast has several heads. What's another head on the beast? The medical establishment, the chemical industries, the pharmaceuticals, different, institutionalized this and that and every other thing. The global corporatocracy, which basically controls all the earth. So this mass of all these types of entities that make up the world that we see all around us today is in fact the beast of Revelation. Not to be confused with the man who is also considered the beast or the head of the beast system. So there's really 2 parts to this. There's the huge economic, social, chemical, medical, institutionalized learning, higher learning, sociology, psychology. All of these different things are moving and shaping everybody who live on the face of the earth every single day, pushing them in a certain direction and almost always pushing them away from any kind of a relationship with the God of the children of Israel. So, and all of Christianity sees this. They see these ugly, horrible things that are going on, and they see the world's leaders who are enslaved by this system forcing things down their throat, such as, man and his wife who owned a bakery couldn't refuse to bake a cake for a homosexual wedding. Okay, so it wasn't enough that they could just go down the street and find somebody else. They had to target these people who were people of faith. And that's essentially the fulfillment of the beast system persecuting the harlot of Revelation. And I define the harlot of Revelation as any system, any religious system that rejects or changes the commandments of Jehovah God, our Father. So that's the biblical definition of what a harlot is at that level. Mm-hmm. The harlot of Revelation is not just merely some woman who's committed adultery with a whole bunch of men and women or whoever. We're talking about something far bigger than mere adultery. We're talking about total repudiation of God's commandments. And what do we see in theology? Total repudiation of God's commandments. Complete and total, a substitutionary thing where they're saying, okay, we don't have to keep those commandments in the Old Testament. And we just do the things in the New Testament that it says we're supposed to do. But they do all this stuff, of course, at the complete ignorance or ignoring what Messiah, God's Son, said to do. In Matthew 6:33, he said, seek his righteousness, seek the righteousness of God first, and all these things would be added to you. Well, everybody forgets the seek the righteousness of God's part. They changed it through the theology into something else. And that's what they always do. They change the definition of righteousness. They change the definition of holiness. They change the definition of purity. They change the definition of loving your neighbor. They change the definition of loving your enemies. They change all these biblical definitions under the guise of theology. And they make it look good, and they make it easy for people to believe whatever they want to believe and fit in somewhere. Oh, you don't like the theology in this church? Well, here's another church down the street. Now, never mind that the fact in Acts, they were in the upper room and they were all in one accord. Why were they in one accord? Because they were keeping Torah, they were keeping the Sabbath, they were keeping the feast, they were loving their neighbors, they weren't stealing, they weren't cheating. They knew that the Torah is the narrow path to salvation that Yeshua talked about. So getting back, I've drifted off just a little bit, but getting back to the timeline, I consider the 7 years from 2008 to 2015 to be the 7 years of plenty. It started with a great economic crash, and then you've seen this stock market go up, 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 up. There's some gyrations and volatility, but it's up, 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 up. 7 years of plenty. And now we passed 2015. We entered into the 7 years of famine. And I won't go into today exactly how I view 2015 to the present time as famine. That would take too long. But I want to say that it's very important that certain things have to happen before the 1260 days start. And if you read Revelation very carefully, then what it says is that all the world will follow after the beast. Now, it's not talking about the anti-Messiah, it's talking about the beast system. So I see a great economic crash happening. I thought the economic crash was going to happen in the fall of 2015. I made all preparations. Tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of people made preparations. They saw all this stuff that looked incredibly prophetic and made preparations. Well, it didn't happen. If you read on my website, kingmosessong.com, I did a 40-day fast from September 13, 2015 to October 23rd of 2015. And one of the things I was fasting for was that I knew the children of Israel were not ready to be enslaved into the cashless world society. And I asked Yehovah to delay it. Maybe he delayed it. I don't know, but it sure looks.
Well, yeah, a lot of people have been preparing for a while, but I do think it wasn't quite the time. And at the same time, on the downside, a lot of people have kind of fallen asleep, that they were preparing and now they just stopped. So
yeah, and you always want to be prepared. You always want to be prepared for something bad that could happen, whether it's mental preparation or physical preparation. You come to expect what might happen, and then when it hits you, you're not so susceptible to panic. And I think that's the best thing, because when the economic crash happens, all of a sudden, within hours, you will not be able to buy food on store shelves. They intend to crash all the currencies of the world, all of them, to zero. That means your 401ks are gone, your IRAs are gone, your annuities are gone, your pensions are gone, your cash bank accounts are gone. Most stocks and mutual funds that you own are gone. They wipe out currency. The only people left standing are people with hard assets. They've bought something, they paid for it, they don't owe money on it, it's theirs. It belongs to them. Whether you've got gold or silver or real estate or other types of material possessions, those things will still be there. But fiat paper money, which is just spoken into existence by the will of the Federal Reserve, and it really doesn't exist in the first place, because it's all of it's a mental game that they play with digits on a computer. So, and it's not real. So one of the key things I want to get back to is what has to happen in order that all the world will follow after the beast. And I believe the mortal head wound that is mentioned in the book of Revelation is this great economic disaster. If you think about the world and how the world operates, there's only one thing that could cause all the people of the world to follow after the beast. And that's a great economic crash where all the currencies are wiped out and completely destroyed. And then every man, woman, and child on the planet is dependent on what either they can farm in the ground that they have around their house or whatever, or what they have stored up. And you're waiting on the restoration of the world's economies in order to function like normal again. So I was sitting alone at home on January the 26th of 2017. And this was about a little over a year since 2015, in the fall of 2015, where the crash did not happen. And I scan hundreds of articles every day, usually just headlines, unless I find something really interesting to read. But on this day, I happened to scan RT.com, and there was an article, an interview of a fellow by the name of Ted Malloch, who was to be Trump's ambassador to the Euro, or the European Union. And he was saying that, that the Euro would crash in 18 months. And he was referencing a book by Joseph Stiglitz, who was a former chief economist of the World Bank, in which he's describing all the technical problems with the Euro and why it's going to crash in 18 months. So I thought to myself, okay, what is 18 months from here? So I used the Gregorian calculation, and I come out to the 27th of July of 2018. And then I thought, well, what does that mean prophetically? So I used the 30-day calculation, which was 18 times 30 is 540, I think. And I come out to the 20th of July of 2018. That's 19 days away from today. So then I thought, okay, what do these dates mean as far as biblical history? And I went to the Jewish calendar to see where they were, what they might have in the month of July, and it jumps out at you like a lion or a cobra, and you see this, that you're at Tish B'Av.
Wow.
And
so
then,
explain for the people that aren't familiar with what Tish B'Av is.
So Tish B'Av is the date in Jewish history. It's the 9th of Av, and that's the same day where Nebuchadnezzar took Jerusalem, the same day where the Jews were kicked out of Spain, the same days the Jews were kicked out of France, same day they were kicked out of England. And there's a list as long as my arm throughout history.
That it keeps repeating itself. It's not just a one-time date.
Yeah, bad things happen to Jews on that date. Tu B'Av, which is 7 days later, is and I didn't even know about Tu B'Av, but Tu B'Av is kind of a day of release or something like that. So I guess all the bad stuff's happened and you can breathe a sigh of release. They do a lot of weddings on Tu B'Av, apparently. So where are we now?
Okay, so yeah, we got, okay. Did we cover? We did. Do you believe? And we're in the last days. So yes, you covered all the calculation in the last days.
Yep.
And then, what will the crash look like? That's a big one because I think you covered some of that. But
let me mention 3 other points before we move on to that. Is that if you Google Casey Research cryptocurrencies outlaw G20. The G20 is meeting in Buenos Aires the weekend of July 20th. Coincidence? And the article says that they've uncovered evidence that they're going to outlaw all cryptocurrencies. They're going to ban them. Okay, so if you crash all the economies, you outlaw all the cryptocurrencies, nobody anywhere has anything. No money. You're totally dependent on whatever all the government leaders come up with. Another interesting thing I saw the other day, there's a YouTube channel called Mr. BB, something like that. And he had a thing about planetary alignments, that right around that time that all the planets are supposed to be like on the same side of the sun and this kind of thing. So it's just another thing, a gee whiz thing out there. Now, I regard as far more important is all the economic gyrations, all the tension between the Trump administration and all the countries of the world over trade, over tariffs, and all these things that have the entire world on edge. It's a never-ending stream of economic news, and it's generally bad economic news, except for people living in the United States who've had the dial just go shh. So those are a list of things that seem to be indicating, we're heading towards a very big economic event.
Yeah, exactly.
So, yeah, how long do you think we've got before an economic collapse? 19 to 26 days. On the 20th, we might see massive gyrations in the markets. We could see the crash right on the 20th. That's 1,000 days after my 40-day fast. Exactly 1,000 days. And the scriptures indicate in some places, and you'll see it in Deuteronomy 32, that one can put 10,000 to flight. Okay, so that's a repeated theme, and perhaps that's what my fast did. I don't know. I haven't been to the mountain and heard Yehovah speak to me personally and say, "Yep, I honored your fast. You got 1,000 days." I haven't heard that. Did he do that? I don't have any idea. So moving on, what will the crash look like? Total disaster. 2008, all over again, and the world's economy jumps completely over a cliff, never to be seen again in its current form. All world currencies destroyed via derivatives, bonds, market crashes in 1 hour. And that's all it takes. There's 1.5 quadrillion or more of these derivatives out there in US dollars. And it only takes a few dominoes being pulled out of the wall, a few bricks pulled out of the wall, and the whole thing crashes down. That was the big fear of the U.S. government in 2008, was that this domino effect would start and spread all the way around the world, because they've set up this fraudulent fiat currency system, and it's fake. And all of these derivative bets, these collateral debt obligations, the mortgage-backed securities, all this kind of stuff. It's a big casino, and it's built on fake fiat paper money. Okay, so what happens when all the currencies fail? Well, then the just-in-time delivery system fails. All food is replenished in the supermarket about every 3 days. It's a continual replenishment system. But if you don't have a currency, what manufacturer of food is going to send food to a store and they don't have a currency in return? Nobody. Everything's going to stop. Hungry people come looking for food. There will be anarchy, killings, and unchecked violence. Evil people, the people who have no hesitation at robbing and hurting people, they're going to feel the freedom to roam at large. The police and the fire, the military will not be able to contain them. It's a sheer numbers game. This is the beast mortal head wound, as economics is one of the heads of the Revelation beast system. Everybody always used to think, oh, it's a bunch of kings of countries. Well, you do have that element that there's key countries. And if you look at the Economist magazine cover at the first of 2015, it's Barack Obama and the chief heads of the countries and some other people. But it's showing you that this is the global elite, global corporatocracy, and we're in control of the world. We pull all the strings. We manipulate the currencies. We manipulate gold and silver. We manipulate the stocks. We own you. That's basically their message. What should we do to prepare ourselves for the crash? You've got to have food, water, and shelter, and have it away from big cities. Make a plan to visit an aunt or an uncle that lives in a small town somewhere away from big cities. You don't want to be around the violence of the big cities. You want to buy some gold, silver, hard assets, coins, junk silver bags, bars. Junk silver bags. Junk silver is dimes and different coins that used to have silver content up to a certain year in the 1960s or somewhere. So any coin shop will sell these kinds of things. There won't be any international trade since all currencies fail. So all the merchants of the world will be sitting waiting to unleash all of their goods, but they don't have anywhere to go until there's currency to exchange in return for the goods. The only people, the goods, supplies, gasoline, all of this will be used up by military, fire, police, hospitals. That's where it goes first in emergency situations. So you have to be ready to weather 2 months, and I'm saying at least 2 months, if not 3 months, with whatever food, water, and shelter that you have. So get out of the big cities. The trade between countries will be extremely limited, and it will probably only happen at the exchange of gold. But that's the system that is going to come out of the ashes of the collapse. It's going to be a gold and possibly silver-backed world currency. It'll be a cryptocurrency. It'll all be in a computer, just 1 and 0 bytes, just numbers in a computer based on a hard asset foundation. And the reason that they base it on a hard asset foundation is because you have to do something to gain the trust of all the heads of the countries and virtually all the people. So they'll sit around a great big table at the United Nations or somewhere, and they'll say, okay, who's got all this gold? Who's got all this silver? Who's got mines that have proven resources in them? And they'll ante all this up, and then they'll come up with a cryptocurrency that'll have a sort of a currency effect. You know, let's say the U.S. has more gold than China. Okay, so the digits in the U.S. cryptocurrency will outweigh the China currency or the Russian currency or the Philippines currency or the Indian currency or whoever. And that way, the global elite, they protect themselves and insulate themselves from the people who would indeed do them harm if they ever found out what these guys are up to on the global crash. The global crash is probably going to be all blamed on Donald Trump. That's just my guess. I'm not saying that I have any inside information on that, but if you look at what's happening, it's Trump constantly driving all these countries over the edge. And when they get to the point, let's say for a minute that Saudi Arabia started demanding gold from the United States in return for oil. That's a massive problem. The United States doesn't have the gold. If Russia does the same thing, that's a massive problem. All of a sudden, in just a few hours, the pressure on the fiat money system would be so tremendous that everything would just break apart. And that's a great time for the elite. They just push the button, they cause the derivative collapse, and it's all over. They get exactly what they want. They get exactly what they said they were going to have 30 years ago in 1988. Okay, is that enough about preparing ourselves?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's up to the individual to just be ready, and I think you covered that yeah, we definitely need food and supplies, and if you don't have that, better get, doing something because you don't have much time.
You've got to have a plan.
The last thing is just, according to these calculations and all that this is the big start of the chaos and everything, but just counting down to the end. Then, what is your belief about the temple, if that's going to be built and all that? And then also counting down to when the end is, when Messiah comes and sets up his kingdom here on earth.
Okay. Your question to me is, when is the temple going to be built? We know it's going to be built after this millennium, and it's going to be overseen by Messiah Yeshua. So there's always the question of, will the Jews build a third temple? And whether they build it or not, in my opinion, doesn't matter. If they go up onto this thing they call the Temple Mount and they start doing sacrifices at some point, then the whole world is going to go absolutely nuts. The Middle East is very interesting to follow. It's almost as if, it's almost as if the Israeli military and the U.S. military are trying to provoke the Arabs into fighting with Israel. And we know by virtue of Zechariah 13:9-7, that that's not going to work out so good for Israel. But Israel kind of ignores those verses. The temple, if you do a Google search and you look for a fellow by the name of Ken Klein, he did and that's Klein. He did a great documentary which proves, in my opinion, that the real location of the temple is about 300 feet south of what they call the Temple Mount, and that according to Josephus, this area they call the Temple Mount is really the old Roman fort. What he says in the video, and I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but it says that as you were walking through Jerusalem, you could not see the temple because of the Roman fort. Well, if you look at the position which a much later, hundreds of years later, Jewish historian placed the Roman fort, it's ridiculous to think that that many thousands of men could have lived in that tiny little thing on the northwest corner of the temple. It's much more likely that the Temple Mount was in the city of David, 300 feet south of this Roman fort, this great big huge Roman fort. So that's what I've come to think as far as that Temple Mount. But if the Jews go up and begin sacrifices, then the whole Muslim world will go absolutely nuts. And then I think we'll see Zechariah 13:7-9 happen right before our eyes. And Nathaniel, I don't know if I've told you before, but I think that happens on the date that you initiate your 1,335 days. I think that's about
February 19th, 2019. Is that the date?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. One thing that's very important to understand if you're trying to understand this abomination of desolation thing that Daniel writes about, is that a false religion is any religion that does away with, adds to, takes away from the commandments of God. So a Christianity qualifies as a false religion in that regard. Islam qualifies as a false religion in that regard. And Judaism qualifies as a false religion in that regard. So often in Christianity, and I was in Christianity about 37 or 8 years, in Christianity, you're never taught the difference between Judaism and Torah. You always hear the term oral Torah, but all that is things that rabbis said and wrote. And in Judaism, they hold up the oral Torah higher than they hold up the written Torah of Almighty God. So that qualifies Judaism as a false religion. It's a real simple concept. So anything, in my opinion, that is contrary to the commandments of God and is a religious system qualifies as the harlot of Revelation. And I think that's what we see on all the hills of the earth, all the continents, is this massive harlot of Revelation that is diametrically opposed to, subverts, perverts, adds to, takes away from the written commandments of Yehovah God, our Elohim, our Creator. And he said, do things this way. And Judaism has been changing it and adding to it ever since. And what do we see? 2,500 years, 3,000 years of persecution for doing things those way. Okay, let's move on to number 5. It's when does Messiah arrive and set up his kingdom on earth? On my spreadsheet, that is either the Day of Trumpets or the Day of Atonement of 2022. And if you go from April 5, 6 and add 1,260 days, you come out to September 16th, 2022. Then on that day is the day that the 2 witnesses are killed. Gone, laying in the streets for 3 days, and the whole world rejoices. But on that day, something else happens. If you go back to Revelation 12, it says that the woman is in the wilderness for 1,260 days, right? That's the end of it. So when the 2 witnesses are killed, then the protection from the world, the protection given by God and his son, which I think of it as like a great big dome over this place on the earth. And the scripture in Revelation 12 says Satan can't even go there. Well, Satan's a spirit. If he can't go there, then that means God and his son have done something special to keep him out. So it's a physical location. We know that by the wording of Revelation 12. I maintain that I live in that location, which is the wilderness of Revelation 12. I won't go into that, but I'll throw it out there. You can find it in my writings. So you've got 9/16/2022. Then let's go to Revelation 2, and it talks about persecution for 10 days. Well, you add 10 to 9/16/2022, and you come out to Day of Trumpets. You add another 10, you're on Day of Atonement. So I think that Messiah returns on one of those 2 days. What happens if he comes on Day of Trumpets 2022? What's going on for 10 days before, that all the armies of the earth are destroyed, and that's in the Day of Atonement. So that's basically my time frame, and I think his return probably depends on after 3.5 days, the 2 witnesses rise from the dead, and then it says that the whole world was greatly afraid, or I'm paraphrasing a little bit, and then you see the scripture says, "Come up here," and the 2 witnesses ascend up to heaven. So what happens between the 3.5 days where they rise again that morning, and how long are they doing whatever they're doing until Messiah Yeshua comes and destroys all the armies of the earth? I don't know that answer, but I can't wait to watch it. So that's the end of my notes, Nathaniel. Do you want to?
Yeah. Well, again, I want to just thank you for presenting all this, and just say that it is a huge encouragement to me, at least, because back in 2015, I had put all sorts of videos out saying we have this many days till the midst of the week, that February 19th is so many days away, and then April 6th of 2019, so many days. And everybody just thought it was funny, and everybody just thought it was a joke. And I got a lot of hate from it, or a lot of confused people. So after so many days, I decided not days, months, actually, of maybe about 6 to 8 months of continually hounding people on Facebook and YouTube about these days. I just kind of stepped back a little bit, and I knew that if these were accurate, that in the future there'd be a greater revelation, and I'd be able to share the dates again. Other people like Marshall here would have dates, and it would just verify that this really is the way things are going to happen. And so I really do appreciate Marshall here sharing information that these dates are correct, even though it's not exactly how a lot of people have theorized it, being like the first day of the 70 weeks, or the first day of the 7-year Shavua, being the economy collapse, or being everything going crazy. That it might very well be 3.5 years down the road. So yeah, that's basically what I had to say. So if I guess if we're all finished for today, that we'll have to come to an end of this stream, and perhaps we'll have another one before the end, or maybe this will be the final warning. We'll see how it goes.
Okay, I've enjoyed it, Nathaniel. You know that you mean a lot to me. When I found you and you showed me that 1,335 days, I had the 1,335 days moved up just a little bit from where you have it, and I don't think I ever told you that. I had the 1,335 days added to April 5 and 6 of 2019, and that comes out right at the end of October. And there's a very interesting little thing that Paul says in the book of Acts, that he was just 12 days from Jerusalem. Okay, so if you add, if you factor in that 12 days, that's the 12 days past the last day of Tabernacles. It's just a coincidence, right? Check it out.
Yeah, no, it sounds cool. So let's bid our audience shalom and goodbye for now, and peace. And yeah, hopefully we'll just have to wait and see what happens. So just make sure you're all prepared, and just trust Jehovah, keep his commandments, and he will be your security.
All right. Shalom.
All right. Shalom.